Amina grew up in a small village surrounded by green fields and dusty roads that glistened under the sun. Her house was modest, but it was always filled with laughter and the smell of fresh bread baking in the morning. Across the narrow path from her home lived Samir, a boy with a mischievous smile and an energy that seemed impossible to contain. From the first day they met in the village playground, they were inseparable. They ran through the fields, climbed trees, and spent long afternoons sharing stories about their dreams. Amina loved listening to Samir's wild ideas, and Samir loved how Amina would laugh at the simplest things, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and joy. Even as children, Samir had a way of teasing Amina in a playful manner that always made her giggle. "One day, you'll be my wife," he would say with a grin. And Amina would roll her eyes, pretending to scold him. She did not know whether to take his words seriously, but the innocence of the statement made her smile. Their friendship was pure, filled with the kind of trust and joy that only childhood can bring. They shared secrets under the shade of an old banyan tree, planned imaginary adventures across the mountains, and dared each other to do little tricks that left them both laughing until sunset. Life in the village was simple, but it was beautiful in its own way. Neighbors knew each other, and celebrations were shared by everyone. Festivals brought the entire village together, and Samir and Amina would run through the streets, their hands sticky with sweets, faces painted with colors, and hearts full of happiness. Amina loved these moments, and she loved that Samir was always by her side, cheering her on when she climbed the tallest trees or dared to race through the fields. She never thought much about the future. Every day was an adventure, and every moment with Samir felt like a memory in the making. However, life has a way of changing even the happiest of moments. One day, Amina's father received news that forced their family to move to a distant city. The change was sudden and unexpected. Amina could not understand why they had to leave the village where everything was familiar, where her friends lived, and where Samir waited, just across the path. On the day of their departure, the village seemed quieter, as if it, too, was sad to see her go. Samir stood near the edge of the path, his usual grin replaced with a frown. He tried to hide it, but Amina saw the sadness in his eyes. "Will you remember me?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. Samir chuckled lightly, but there was a strange softness in his expression. "Of course I will. And remember," he said, pointing his finger at her, "one day, you'll be my wife." Amina laughed, though a lump formed in her throat. She hugged him tightly, trying to hold on to the warmth of their friendship, knowing that life was about to pull them apart. The journey to the city was long and tiring. Amina looked out of the bus window, watching the fields and familiar paths disappear into the distance. She felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. The city was nothing like her village. It was noisy, crowded, and full of buildings that seemed to touch the sky. Everything was new, and she had to learn quickly how to navigate this unfamiliar world. In the city, life was not as simple or joyful as it had been in the village. Amina missed the freedom of running through the fields and climbing trees. She missed the sound of birds in the morning and the laughter of children playing outside. But most of all, she missed Samir. She tried to write to him, to tell him about her new life. But letters often got lost or delayed. The distance made their friendship fragile, and slowly, they drifted apart. Despite the challenges, Amina was determined not to let life defeat her. She remembered her father's words. Strength comes from facing challenges, not avoiding them. She took these words to heart. She began learning new skills, reading books that her parents could afford, and exploring activities that helped her build confidence. She joined a small club for girls where they learned self-defense and basic martial arts. At first, she was hesitant, unsure if she could manage. But over time, she discovered a sense of power she had never known before. Her body grew stronger, her mind sharper, and her heart braver. School was another challenge. The city was bigger, and students came from all backgrounds. Some were kind, while others were harsh and dismissive. Amina faced moments of doubt and loneliness, but she refused to give in. She worked hard, made a few friends who shared her values, and slowly built a life where she could stand tall, even when the world seemed overwhelming. Evenings were the hardest. She often found herself thinking about the village, about Samir, and the promises of childhood. She remembered his laughter, the way he had always believed in her, and how simple, yet profound those words had been. One day, you'll be my wife. The memory made her smile and motivated her at the same time. It was a strange feeling, but it reminded her that no matter how far she went or how much she changed, some memories could never be erased. As the years passed, Amina transformed from a shy, uncertain girl into a confident young woman. She still carried the innocence of her childhood, but it was now combined with strength, courage, and determination. Her experiences had shaped her, taught her patience, and helped her discover her own potential. She had learned that life was not just about waiting for things to happen, but about taking action and creating her own path. Though the village and Samir were far away, they were never far from her heart. She often imagined what he was doing, how he had grown, and whether he still remembered the promises of the past. These thoughts were bittersweet. They made her long for the past, but they also made her realize how much she had grown. She knew that if life ever gave her a chance to return, she would not be the same girl who had left years ago. Amina's journey of growth was not just physical but emotional. She learned resilience through challenges, patience through struggles, and hope through uncertainty. Every day was a step toward becoming the person she was meant to be. The city had taken away her village, but it had given her the tools to face life with courage and grace. And somewhere deep inside, she held on to the belief that some promises, no matter how distant they seemed, could still find a way to be fulfilled. One evening, as she stood by her apartment window, watching the sun set over the city skyline, she thought of the banyan tree, the dusty paths, and Samir's mischievous smile. A small, determined smile spread across her face. She knew that one day she would return not as the shy girl who had left, but as someone who had faced the world and come back stronger. The promise, once playful and light-hearted, now carried a new meaning. It was no longer just about love or friendship. It was about courage, growth, and the power of keeping one's word. Amina's heart felt light yet determined. She whispered to herself, "One day, I will go back." And with that thought, she turned away from the window, ready to face the challenges of tomorrow, knowing that every struggle, every tear, and every lesson had brought her closer to the person she was destined to become. Years passed, and the city had shaped Amina into a strong and confident woman. She had grown taller. Her steps were sure, and her eyes held a spark of determination that could not be ignored. Yet, despite all the achievements, there was a quiet longing in her heart, a memory of a small village, dusty paths, and the boy who had once teased her with the words, "One day, you'll be my wife." That memory had never faded, and it whispered to her every now and then, reminding her that the past sometimes had a way of catching up with the present. Amina decided it was time to return to the village. The thought filled her with both excitement and nerves. She remembered the banyan tree under which she and Samir had spent so many afternoons. She remembered the fields where they had raced each other and the laughter that had once seemed endless. But she also knew that she was no longer the timid girl who had left. Life had taught her lessons that made her resilient, and her experiences had molded her into a woman who could face challenges with courage and grace. When she arrived, the village looked both familiar and different. Some of the paths had changed, new houses had been built, and yet, the old banyan tree still stood tall in the village square. Children ran around as she had once done, their laughter echoing in the air, bringing back memories that made her smile. Amina's heart beat faster as she walked through the streets, recognizing the shops and homes, each carrying a memory of the past. It was in the village square that she first saw Samir again. He was older now, his mischievous smile still there, but mixed with the maturity of the years. For a moment, he did not recognize her. Amina had changed so much that he hesitated before speaking. Then, as if realizing something familiar in her eyes, his expression shifted. "Amina?" he asked, his voice a mix of surprise and disbelief. She smiled. A quiet, confident smile that carried the strength of the years gone by. "Yes, it's me," she replied softly. She could see the surprise in his eyes, the recognition dawning slowly. "I've come back." Samir laughed, that same playful laugh from their childhood, though now tinged with curiosity. "I can't believe it! You've changed so much." "I hardly recognized you." Amina noticed the old charm in his voice, the ease with which he tried to make light of the moment, but she also sensed that he was impressed, not just by her appearance, but by the aura of confidence that surrounded her. The village had its own little challenges, nothing dangerous, but enough for Amina to step in and show the courage she had developed over the years. A sudden storm had damaged some of the old houses, and the villagers were working together to repair the roofs and clean the debris. Amina joined them, moving with skill and determination that left the villagers quietly amazed. She helped lift heavy beams, tie ropes, and organize the work efficiently. Her presence brought a new energy to the village, and even Samir could not help but admire her. While working together, Samir joked about the past. "Remember when I said you would be my wife?" he asked, smiling. "I didn't think you'd come back like this." Amina laughed, shaking her head. "I remember. And I came back, not as the girl you teased, but as someone who learned to stand tall and face life. I guess I'm fulfilling that promise in my own way." Her words carried warmth, confidence, and a hint of playful challenge. Samir's eyes widened, realizing that the girl he had known had truly transformed into a woman of strength and courage. Over the next few days, Amina spent time with the villagers, sharing her knowledge from the city and helping improve daily life. She taught young girls some basic skills in self-defense and encouraged them to pursue their dreams. She organized small activities that made the village children laugh, just as she and Samir had laughed years ago. The villagers began to see her as a natural leader, someone who had returned not just to relive memories, but to contribute meaningfully to their lives. Samir, too, was drawn into her world once more. He remembered the playful girl he had teased, and now realized that the woman standing before him had depth, wisdom, and strength. They spent hours walking through the fields, talking about life, their past adventures, and the changes they had each experienced. The laughter of childhood mixed with thoughtful conversations, creating a bond that was now richer and more meaningful than before. One day, a local festival brought the entire village together, and Amina was invited to join the preparations. She helped decorate, arrange activities for children, and even performed a short demonstration of skills she had learned over the years. The villagers watched in admiration, and Samir could not stop smiling. He realized that the girl who had once run beside him through the fields had returned as someone extraordinary. As the festival reached its peak, Amina and Samir found themselves standing under the banyan tree, the same place where their childhood memories were strongest. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. Amina turned to Samir and said softly, "You know, your words back then, they stayed with me. I grew stronger because I remembered that promise. Not just to you, but to myself. I wanted to become someone I could be proud of." Samir looked at her, his eyes reflecting surprise and admiration. "I never imagined. You've changed so much. You're amazing." He paused, then added with a grin, "And now, I can finally say, maybe that promise wasn't just a joke." Amina smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart. The playful promise of childhood had become something real, not because of words alone, but because of the journey they had both taken. She had returned not as someone who needed to be saved or guided, but as an equal, a strong, confident woman who could face life with courage. The festival ended, but Amina's presence had left a lasting impression on the village. She continued to spend time there, sharing her knowledge, guiding young girls, and helping improve the community. Samir remained close, not as the boy who teased her, but as a partner in friendship and life. Together, they laughed, planned, and supported each other, proving that promises, when respected and honored, could carry meaning far beyond childhood. Evenings became their time to reflect and talk. They would sit under the banyan tree, watching the stars, and share stories of the years gone by. Samir often marveled at how Amina had grown, not just in strength but in wisdom. She had faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and returned to the village not just to remember the past, but to make a difference in the present. Amina knew that her journey was not just about fulfilling a playful promise. It was about the lessons she had learned, the courage she had developed, and the way she had embraced life fully. Samir realized that love and friendship could grow deeper when both individuals respected and admired each other's strength. What had begun as a childhood tease had evolved into a bond built on trust, courage, and shared experience. In the end, Amina and Samir stood side by side, looking at the village they both loved. It was not the same as before, but it held the memories of their past and the promise of the future. They had grown, changed, and returned to each other, not as the children who had once played together, but as people who had faced life and emerged stronger. Amina whispered softly, "We've both changed, but some things never change, like the bond we share." Samir smiled, placing his hand lightly on hers. "Yes, and maybe now, that promise can mean something real." The sun set behind the fields, casting a golden glow over the village. Amina and Samir stood together, not as a boy and girl of the past, but as equals who had learned, grown, and returned to fulfill a promise that had begun with laughter years ago. And in that moment, the village seemed to glow a little brighter, as if celebrating not just their reunion, but the strength, courage, and love that had grown between them over time.